permission to move one if there's only
Absolutely, yeah. Do whatever the fuck you want, man.
Keith Smith Smiley now. Keith Smith Smiley now. I go by the sociology and crypto.
All right. Good morning. What time is it, Ken? Noon. It's fucking noon. All right.
10 a.m. start time.
Yep. Hold on the mic. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. How goes it? Terribly. Morning of just technical difficulty after technical difficulty. Still don't have a projector. No microphones for a little while this morning. No keyboard, no mouse. Ken. And we're still working things out. All right, fantastic. But we're tethered to my phone, and that's how we're streaming now. Fantastic. So it's finally a go. Welcome. No, we're not doing any opening remarks or anything like that because there just isn't fucking time because we're running so goddamn late. So we're just gonna jump right into this thing. First speaker is gonna be Keith Smith Smiley, talking about sociology and cryptocurrency. Thank you, Keith.
He's a little stage shy, but yes, he's a Dogecoin dog, a Shiba Inu. His name's Toshi, and I'm going to talk about the story of how he came to be in my possession, and a lot of other things relating to the sociology of cryptocurrency. A lot of us here today are here. We wouldn't have met each other if it wasn't for cryptocurrency. We meet in strange, dark places on the internet, and we become friends. So where we're here, a lot of us come from across the state or the whole metro area to come here to Philadelphia and meet with each other. Give you a little bit about my story. It's kind of a love story when it comes to crypto. Been involved in crypto since 2013. I came into some hard, and the hard times left me in one of the poorest towns here in Pennsylvania. I had no car, I had no freedom, and I was in a toxic relationship. I always wanted a Shiba Inu. I wanted them ever since I came to crypto because the first altcoin I bought was Dogecoin. And I was like, wow, this dog is so cool, and I fell in love with the breed. But it's outside of me being able to afford it, and I didn't have the time to train one. I knew I'd have to have a lot of free time to do that. So I was living in this, it's a rough town. It's an old coal mining town up north. The average family of four makes about $11,000 a year there, so it's really poor. A lot of decrepit row homes that you can buy for about $2,000, and you can pick them up for about $500. So it kind of looks like Detroit. And I got stuck there. I had no way to get out of there. And today we've got a food truck here today. It's called the Some Pig Food Truck. It's outside, so if you guys are hungry, they accept Bitcoin. One of only 2 food trucks in the nation that accept Bitcoin. Yep. So definitely, if you got some Bitcoin, you want to buy some pork sandwiches for lunch, try them out. Now, I'm going to talk about how I came to meet the owners of Some Pig. So I'm in this bad position, and it was really interesting because I was in a relationship where the person didn't support my passion of cryptocurrency. I got put down. And a lot of people in crypto understand this when you're dealing with family members and loved ones that shun the amount of energy and time you put into cryptocurrency. And that was likely because the person didn't see any reward from it. I came in a bad position. I had to spend about 70 Bitcoin on lawyer fees, and I had no way to get out of that town. I had no transportation, and it requires transportation to get a job and move to a better place. So I had about $2,000 saved up in fiat to buy a car and hopefully get out of there. Because that was the next step in my life to, better my life, to get out of this town I got stuck in. And unfortunately, $2,000 doesn't buy much of a car. And I was having a hard time finding a car, so I went on social media and I said, hey, I'm looking for a car for under $2,000. And the owner of some big food truck says, oh, I got a Cadillac for $7,000. I'm like, well, I only got $2,000. So, I'd love to have a Cadillac, but in no way I'm gonna be able to buy a Cadillac with $2,000. And so I talked to the one owner and I was like, well, I have Bitcoin, because I've always been, I do all kinds of, trading and gambling. Anything I could, I was gambling Dogecoin to stack Bitcoin. And I was like, I can pay some in Bitcoin. And she was like, I don't know, let me talk to my husband, the guy that's out there, Steve, right now. And, oh yeah, you can pay in Bitcoin and I'll cut you a deal. I was like, great. Well, that bought me a Cadillac, paying in Bitcoin, that freed me from that town and took me to a new place. So I left that poisonous relationship. I got in my car, we broke up, I packed everything that I owned, all my life possessions inside that Cadillac, and I drove for an hour and a half. I stepped out my car, and I met the wife that I have today. So within 5 minutes of me stepping out of that car, this little butterfly effect, and it all goes back to a single transaction. And that transaction is a transaction I had with him out there, buying that car. So these transactions are really important. And this is where I'm gonna kind of tie it in with the sociology of the human connections in cryptocurrency that are being built. Now, I'd like you to check out this website if you can. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but it is called dailyblockchain.github.io. dailyblockchain.github.io. And I don't know if you guys have service in here. My phone's not giving me service, but for those online, if you want to check it out later, this is a visual representation of the blockchain. And what you see is the spent and unspent transactions that are being added to the Bitcoin blockchain. So every time somebody uses Bitcoin and they interact with another individual, they're opening they're growing this blockchain and they're opening a new channel of human connection. And that human connection is important because each one of these transactions that we make with one another, we open a new relationship and a new foundation within our society. People are like, oh, but Bitcoin could, just turn off one day, electricity in it shut off and whatnot. It's too far gone for that, because crypto is here in our society on such a level that it's never going away without a mass extinction event, without humans going away, because we're using it as a form of cash. We're buying pork sandwiches outside with Bitcoin, and by having that connection, you get to meet this guy out there, and you've got a new friend. And yeah, there's, Bitcoin's about, being able to engage in business without having to know the other person. But knowing you guys is half of all of this joy. Being able, I didn't drive 2 hours here, because I didn't want to be around you guys. I drove 2 hours here because there's so much I learned from you and I value from you. So these relationships continue to build. And these digital communities that started with Bitcoin on Bitcoin Talk. It goes all the way back, and Satoshi saw this. He saw the community growing in Bitcoin. It's now splintered off, and there's all these other cool little digital communities. And these communities are actually immune to social media. Like, they can exist outside of these big tech platforms and continue to thrive. So I ended up, so I came to Nexus, if you guys know what the Nexus cryptocurrency is. I'm one of the founders of Nexus. And being a founder of Nexus, I was living in that poor town. I had nothing. I didn't even have money in Nexus. So Preston bought the software for me. And I built it for free. And then I tried to build the community around the foundation of being inclusive to one another and also on cypherpunk principles. Because a lot of people around the world don't have the same freedoms that we enjoy here in the United States. A lot of them never heard of libertarianism. They don't understand things such as self-defense and, like this property is actually my property. So they're open to these new ideas now coming into these communities. So you have to build a strong foundation of people that believe in cypherpunk values. And so we focused on that a couple of years ago by 2017. We all know the values of assets just shot through the roof. So here I am. I drive all the way across the country to Aspen, Colorado, and I get to meet dozens, literally hundreds of people that I've known for years that all I knew them as was a dog avatar. And here I'm popping champagne in a bar in Aspen with a guy that's got an accent because he's from the UK. And shout out to you, Boris. And then it hit me. These are real people. These are real people, and their lives are changed forever. I had a friend who passed away in early 2017. Didn't get to see everything. He got cancer and he was dead, and it happened so quick. But his family was taken care of. They're no longer living in a trailer park. They're taken care of forever. Those little transactions he made Dogecoin back in the day paid off because he took those and he met other communities, invested and networked with people. And then one day he's gone, but he had something to give to his family. Now his family's lives changed. And that's what's important about crypto is on the human level, the social, the human structure of our society. We're changing this. We're changing the way that we interact with one another and how we take care of each other. Antonopoulos. I mean, how much energy has he put into educating people, and he brought so many people into this. And it was really kind of a selfless thing that he did. And then one day, everybody was like, I forget, was it Roger Ver that kind of shunned him? And then, for not buying a bunch of Bitcoin. He was too busy educating people. And then out of the hearts of the crypto community, the Bitcoin community, people sent him millions of dollars in Bitcoin. That was a beautiful moment in history because that's a historic event. This is all, it's a special, Bitcoin is history where you can't rewrite it. It's a history book. And I've said this for years. It's a history book that once it's written, it's better than being written in stone because it's forever. And we can look back to those times and those transactions. And it's crazy because I still have the transaction I have with him. I have that saved. It's a memory of mine. And it's recorded on the blockchain. It's a beautiful thing because that was when my life changed. And then from Aspen, I go out the Grand Canyon. I never thought I'd see the Grand Canyon with my own eyes. And I asked my wife to marry me, and all that goes back to making that one risky choice. Yeah, so I sold a bunch of Bitcoin for a car at $700. I exchanged it. But if I didn't make that risky exchange, all these chain of events wouldn't have happened to bring me to where I am today. To allow me to free up my time in Nexus to then help tens of thousands of people in Nexus better their lives. And so I was just thinking about this, talking to Nate the other day, and I'm like, even recently, there was back in 2017, years ago in crypto, there was the End the Fed block party. We had some big food truck out there, and here we are buying pork sandwiches with Bitcoin in front of the Federal Reserve. Giant Bitcoin signs. They took notice to it. So much notice that within 3 days, they actually went public talking about blockchain for the first time, in the Federal Reserve. That's the kind of power that we have here on a society level. And it's the whole network effect that we have, it's really, it's compounding, and it continues to grow. So, if you look at that animation. What you're actually seeing is you're seeing people that have been using Bitcoin, and you're seeing people that are just coming to Bitcoin for their first time. And each one of those little network connections is creating a new network to a point where it's almost alive. Like the blockchain is like almost like a cybernetic organism that's connected into human society. And it's economically, so even if like, okay, you sell, you don't feel good about the price, or if you feel great about the price, you're still creating transactions, and those transactions are important. These transactions are so important, that's why we kind of have to think about using crypto, if we can, anonymously and like cash. If we can exchange that crypto and keep that crypto off exchanges, what we're doing is we're actually building up the cash society, which is important. There's a reason why cash exists. It's part of the human level where I can say, hey, look, I'm gonna throw you a little cash to help me out. It's not pull out your debit card. I need some help. You know, I'm gonna pay you using my debit card. No, people like that feeling of being able to anonymously trade things. So that's kind of what I don't want to take up too much time because we're running a little late. I had a lot more I wanted to talk about. I am actually seeking to come back to Nexus. I was asked by many community members to come back to Nexus. I don't plan to be on the team in Nexus. I believe in decentralization. As I mentioned this last time, it's not a point you reach. You have to continue to strive for. So I want to come back to Nexus, but I want to be completely in the community, in that digital weird community of these cypherpunks from around the world. Just working with them to help grow that community and that foundation. And hopefully from there, Nexus will reach where we set it to go years ago. And I believe it is reaching that point. So once again, my name is Keith Smith, Smiley No. And keep on keeping on, guys.
That was pretty cool that you just came up with that the past couple days, and it kind of reminds me about something that happened here in Philadelphia. I'd like to pay tribute to James Felty, who we just lost last year, which I took a couple minutes to honor him at the Philly blockchain thing when Matt Green was in town, and also spoke a little bit about it at Coinvention. Similarly about how that we do end up just through these meetups and shit like that, forging these relationships with people while just arguing about technology. And then they pass away, and you're like, well, shit, I like that person. I fucking love that person. Very, very weird, strange, surreal shit we have to deal with. But that was that. That talk's over. I met Nate up at Bruce Benton's thing in New Hampshire. It has a very unfortunate name. It's like the New Hampshire Free State Digital Blockchain Asset. It's very, very, very sad to try to remember. But so simply based on meeting him there, speaking with him a bit, and then just reaching out to him recently, and he's the same initials as me, I chose him to speak here today. So Nate's gonna come up and talk about Token Economics 101. Nate?
Open source development goes underfunded because people are not actively considering how they're going to antithetical to the open source seed from people is that they're maybe not able to work on their projects full time. Okay, and so the second principle of token economics is that tokens need a unique value proposition, something they do that's completely different from anybody else, ideally, and something that's going to keep their users from just popping to the next chain. So recently in DeFi, we've seen Sushi come out of nowhere and try to overtake Uniswap, and that's the breaking of a network effect, which has traditionally been a really strong way to have a unique value proposition, is a network effect of users that will keep coming to your coin because there's, in the case of this liquidity pool, there's more liquidity there are more people there using it. So that's one example of an attempt at a unique value proposition. Okay, and in traditional finance, we see a really good example is Google, circa around 2012, had a 21% profit margin with a similar market cap and even less revenue than every airline combined. The airline industry had around 1% of their revenue turn into profit, while Google had 20% of their revenue turn into profit. So that's, in traditional finance, is an example of where value capture and value creation are not always the same, and they're not even correlated. So the principle there is that you can maximize value creation by solving large problems, but you have to maximize value capture by taking large profits. Okay, so applied to crypto, the same method. You know, you're gonna create value the same way. You're gonna solve large problems. So we have Ethereum. Ethereum is a world computer, and it's solving the problem that people have where they can't access the traditional financial system without giving their KYC information, or maybe they don't have KYC information. They're in the third world, so they're not able to access the traditional financial system, and that is a huge problem that's being solved in Ethereum with DeFi right now. The value capture mechanism is how you make your token valuable, and Ethereum actually lacks that. So Ethereum, the underlying token, Ether in Ethereum, doesn't have a fundamental need to be valuable outside of its use for speculation. It has a need in one sense where people that use the Ethereum network may need Ethereum, the token, to be valuable for their projects to run well and to be able to collateralize, for example, DAI with Ethereum. But there's no mechanism that's pushing the price of Ethereum up outside of collateralization, which is kind of a recursive relationship. And again, that's not to say Ethereum, the network, is not valuable, but Ethereum is running some risks by not having their token be forced up outside of speculation. So I wanted to run through, I have a checklist here. We might be streaming slides but a couple projects, and walk through them and talk about their token economics. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Ravencoin. Nate mentioned that we met at New Hampshire Blockchain Digital Asset Conference, and I love Bruce Fenton, and I highly recommend everyone go to that next year. But Ravencoin is one of the projects that I look at and laugh because there is no good token economics in this coin. I think, so looking at the first aspect, the three aspects are value creation, value capture, and unique value proposition. And in the first place, the value creation of Ravencoin, it's supposed to solve the problem of maybe digitizing securities in an elegant way, and it does that, but that's not really a problem that I see a lot of people asking to be solved. Like, the traditional financial institutions already have their solutions for how they move stocks and bonds around, and just having a blockchain with securities doesn't necessarily solve any of their problems. And the way I see Ravencoin moving is toward centralization and getting the buy-in of governments, and that also doesn't solve a problem because we're not going to issue truly decentralized securities on Ravencoin. So it's not really creating that, it's not really solving a large problem. So that's a no on value creation. On value capture, there's also nothing that makes Ravencoin inherently valuable or necessary to the protocol. I'm not aware of any staking incentives. I glanced through the white paper just to check on it. There might be some. But paying, as far as I can tell, Ravencoin is used to pay miners and to pay fees for issuing securities. And the amount of money that's flowing into a currency is what that much to issue these securities, then that amount of money is relatively low, and consequently the token value is going to be low as well. And the third point is on the unique value proposition of Ravencoin. There's not too much that Ravencoin could do that couldn't be copied by another coin except in maybe licenses and agreements with the people who are issuing securities, which again goes back to the self-defeating nature of having a securities, a decentralized blockchain that's the backbone for traditional finance. The next one I want to talk about has been really popular lately. It's Chainlink. And Chainlink is another one of these that's not really, it's solving a big problem, but it's not monetizing it that well. Because Chainlink is used for paying fees, and I think they might have some staking as well, but they're not giving the coin a fundamental reason to be valuable. It's really just the price has gone up exponentially in the past few months because of the speculation surrounding the coin, which it's very useful. You need Oracle price data on Ethereum, but doing it with a coin that doesn't capture some of that value is going to mean some other coin is going to come along, incentivize their users better, and probably take Chainlink's place. Next is Maker. So Maker, I'm moving in terms of worst to best. I want to leave the best for last. Maker is a little better because Maker, if you don't know, is the token that basically makes it's the Federal Reserve Board token to DAI. So Ethereum has a stable coin called DAI. For those of you who don't know, it keeps its price at $1, and the people that do that are the holders of Maker, and they're paid for keeping the price of DAI at $1. So it's solving a problem, which is that people need decentralized, trustless stablecoins, and it's capturing some of that value because you're getting paid an interest for being a decision maker on DAI and giving information about what the price should be, the price of DAI should be. The unique value proposition is in its network effect. So DAI has a lot of people using it so far, and Maker stands to stick around because a lot of people are using it. Next, Basic Attention Token, another example, solves a pretty big problem. People don't like the way that advertising is being monetized nowadays. So it's solving a relatively large problem if it catches on. And it's capturing some of that value because it's requiring people pay the money that they would normally pay for advertisements or that would normally flow through advertisements in a token. And if you have, let's say $50 billion of advertising money going through the token, then the price of the token has to be high enough so that someone can pay, $1 million at a time or $10 million at a time. And that's going to necessitate a certain price of Basic Attention Token to come about. And then that's its value capture. Its unique value proposition is it's built into Brave. So you have a company that is using, giving all of its users the exposure to a specific token and not any other tokens. So it's got kind of like a moat around it, sort of like an economic moat that keeps people in that castle. Second to last one, Monero. So I really like Monero a lot. Everybody should check it out if they haven't already. And Monero is solving a huge problem. It's solving the problem that Bitcoin solved back in 2013, 2014, which is you needed a way to buy drugs, guns, and hire prostitutes on the internet, but cash wasn't able to flow electronically in that way without being traced. There was a way to censor those kinds of transactions. Monero solves that problem, and that's a huge problem because there's a lot of interest in those things. And the value capture happens because Monero is a currency. Currencies inherently capture the value that flows through them. And I read about this on Eat Sleep Crypto. You can read about how what I call the equation of exchange is used to calculate the value of a currency. So that's the value capture of Monero, and the unique value proposition is it's got a lot of people that are vouching for it and a large network effect. So again, going back to network effects as a good unique value proposition for coins to have. And the last one we'll talk about is Binance Coin. So the problem that they're solving is people are being asked to pay fees. People need to pay fees for their exchanges on Binance specifically, and that's a non-trivial amount of people and amount of money that's flowing into fees every year. The value capture is because money is flowing through this coin, which is being used as a medium of exchange. And the unique value proposition is that Binance offers a 50% discount on fees for people trading through. There's probably more to say on these coins. There are a lot of other features, but I wanted to rank them according to the principles of token economics. I'm talking about value creation, value capture, and unique value proposition. And again, my name's Nate. I write for Eat Sleep Crypto, and you can find me on Twitter at Eat Sleep Crypto.
Thanks, other Nate. All right, we're gonna start off with the mining stuff, and no. I remember your name. I wasn't sure if I was gonna do you first, or if we were gonna work on setting up this goddamn projector, because this does have to get dealt with.
Either one.
Let's cut this for 5 minutes and get this, because otherwise it's gonna be shining in your eyes and shit. That'd be terrible. All right, can you cut the live stream? 5 minutes. What am I doing? Mint River and Cloud Ion and Mint. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
I'm a lot of coffee too. Here we go. This is the beginning of the mining session.
Hey guys, Scott Hancock. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience in the Bitcoin mining industry the last couple of years. It's been almost 3 years now, so it's been a lot of fun. I was a political science major a while back and randomly got into the enterprise data center industry. After college, I moved from Virginia to Orange County, California, and that was a lot of fun. Pretty cool to be able to go out to California and try to work really hard and wear shorts to work, and try to make 6 figures after 2 years. If you worked really, really hard, a lot of my friends didn't do that, so I didn't have a life for a while, but I did work hard, moved out to California, and it was cool selling products like Cisco and Oracle and things like that. After about 10 years of being in that industry, I got very interested in crypto and Bitcoin around 2017, and I realized at the time that I could really stay in tech and do something I was passionate about. So it's the perfect blend of finance, technology, politics, and physics even too. So I joined a company that was ran by, he was a 21-year-old at the time, and got to learn a lot about what I thought was a really, really good way to just help your clients out and be honest and transparent in an industry that I think is really, really secretive. So recently I was on a podcast. I did a shoot for about 45 minutes and was very truthful on the podcast, so much that they ended up not airing it. I'm like, wow, What's up with that? Just because I'm ruffling everybody's feathers in the little boys club, that everybody makes each other money and sometimes screws over clients in the process, I don't get aired on this podcast because I was being overly truthful. So what I'm really working on, what I'm bringing to the industry is whenever anybody comes to me related to anything Bitcoin mining related, I'm going to be very transparent and actually tell them what's in their best interest and what's not. Right now the Bitcoin mining industry is really dominated by brokers, and what these brokers do is they just want to keep you one step away from what you're actually getting. And a lot of the time you get misled into something that is going to end up losing you a lot of money just because brokers got, it was a good way for them to get paid. Sometimes brokers have podcasts, they are really well known, they might have 10,000 plus Twitter followers, and it's ultimately not doing Bitcoin any good, it's not doing the Bitcoin community any good, and it's not like providing a good name for the space long term. If we really want to get exposure, I think you do that by being truthful. So now I am a couple months ago I moved on from the company I was with for a couple years and started my own consulting company, Cloud AI Mint. And then I was also hired by a company called BitRiver, one of the largest colo hosting providers in the world, with like $40 million worth of Bitcoin mining equipment. And I was just really selective about who I would work with and who I wouldn't after past experiences. And I do a lot with Arsini, who's here as well. He's the CEO of Wadham. They're based in New York. And some of the cool stuff I like about what I'm doing now is BitRiver, for example, actually has infrastructure built that can host your Bitcoin mining machines properly. A lot of the facilities that exist today, you hear all these fabulous things that are all over the place on YouTube, and then you send $1 million worth of Bitcoin mining machines there, only to find out that they don't get turned on for a month or two because everybody who is there at that facility doesn't know what they're doing. They don't have the right technical expertise. They don't have the right PDUs or racks. They were equipped to run old S9 machines maybe that run at like 1,500 watts, not the new miners you just sent there that run at 3,000 watts. So stuff like this is going on all over the place. It's very, very prevalent, and all of the bad stories in the mining industry, because it's the same group of people that's been around for a while, they never get told. So what I'm trying to do is just really start having clients and investors be able to, I want them to be able to tell good stories about the industry. You have companies that, publicly traded companies that will get all this, raise a bunch of money from shareholders and buy tons of Bitcoin mining machines only to go bankrupt because they probably in a lot of instances knew that it was a short-term play, and real human beings get screwed in the process, unfortunately. So one cool thing I like to talk about at BitRiver as well is, if you know about mining, it takes a lot of energy, and especially with the newer generation machines running at 3,000 watts, you want to get billed based on the amount of energy you're actually using. I would say like 95% of facilities in the world don't really bill you based on the actual usage. They bill you on estimated flat fees. So you're not even getting billed accurately. And BitRiver has power meters where you actually get billed for your usage. So when you're mining with S19 Pros that run at 3250 watts, and if you're overclocking them, you really want to pay for what you use. So I think that's something that should be common sense and required at hosting facilities. And also, really, it's important to read the contracts carefully. A lot of facilities will say you get 99% uptime, but there can be power interruptions, and when there's power interruptions, you actually get way less than that. So it's important to actually be with a facility that has a constant supply of power. A lot of going back to brokers in the space, what I like to do now is just get my clients as close to the source as possible so they can get the best price possible. That can be with getting the actual equipment, going direct to the manufacturers, or with actual sites. There's power brokers that will represent a lot of Bitcoin mining sites that are really, you can look up the website and go direct to the site, but they'll act like it's their site. So I just tell clients, send them direct to the site so they can see it and try to be transparent, and they appreciate what you're doing and they end up working with you more that way. So what I'm really trying to do is just provide honest answers to anybody who wants to get into Bitcoin mining. It is expensive right now. Say generally, to really get a good return, unless you're doing speculative GPU mining, you're going to need around $500,000 or so to really mine Bitcoin or Zcash or ASIC sort of mining machines, application-specific integrated circuit miners, and get a good return on it. So I think that Bitcoin mining is going to continue to be critical for the future of Bitcoin, and a lot of people own the coins, but they don't think about the mining. And I think that as the space continues to grow, Bitcoin mining is going to be a crucial part of it, and it just needs to be done the right way. So I'm trying to provide a good quality service to an industry that so far has I think lacked a lot of transparency that it really needs. That's all I have to talk about.
Sorry about that. I'm being a piece of shit today. I apologize. Everything kind of went wrong, and I just don't really give a fuck anymore. So, everything. You guys are all doing great. So up next we have Michael Genn, who is a PhD student from a university that doesn't want to be mentioned because he doesn't want to associate himself with us.
No, it's fine. Drexel's fine.
He's a PhD student over at Drexel. Drexel is where B-Sides Philly is hosted for the past 3 years now, so they're great security advocates as a school. So, yeah, come on up and do your thing, man.
All right, let's see if I can
Oh, shit.
do this again. All right. So the title of this is Speculative Mining for Fun and Profit. I actually took at Penn State University, right in my undergrad, I took a class, Farming for Fun and Profit. And that class actually really stuck with me and played kind of a role in the mining. So this is my, what would be like kind of a lecture. So really, the way that I would break this down is I'll give you my cryptocurrency story. I have my own mining thesis going into this, which I think is sort of unique in the sense of how I thought about mining. It wasn't necessarily profit driven. And then of course I have, having started in like 2017, I went through a boom, and then 2018, 2019 a bust. So I'll talk about that story. And then I'll talk about my revisited thesis, which I recently have kind of revived. And then of course I'll give you 2 things on how to get started here. The picture here is like, this is I think 2017, probably in the fall. and you know, you see like I was mining Litecoin, so you see these little like 0.1 Litecoin purchases. Most of the images you're going to see here, I pulled from my phone. This is probably the exception, which is like, how did I get into Bitcoin? Well, actually, in 2010, I just started at Penn State, and I was basically learning about the Silk Road and all these crazy things people were doing with Bitcoin. I read the white paper in my mom's basement, downloaded the core. I didn't understand what mining was, so I didn't really know. And I just have these memories of trying to do something in Bitcoin with no Bitcoin and like opening up the CLI, be like, what do I do here? You type a few commands, see some stuff. And then at one point I tried to buy like $60 worth of Bitcoin on PayPal, but I was like, nah, this is too sketchy, and like $60 is like all I have, so I'm not gonna do that. So then, of course, at Penn State, I started joining this little makerspace. This is actually in the basement of a parking garage. Looking back, it's very like appropriate, where people were basically getting together in like computer club style in the basement of this parking garage. The government actually gave them this building for free to use, so they had like $1 rent. They just had to pay taxes. And every Thursday they'd meet up and talk about Bitcoin. And these older guys in the community would like bring in the block eruptors and like talk about how they're making like $10 a month after paying their bills or something. And I was just sort of there. I was actually more interested in building LED lights and farming, so I was just actually like drones, and I was just kind of there like just by association, and I knew what they were talking about, doing computers and everything. So, but I didn't really get into it. I used a couple old PCs to mine some Litecoin. At the time, you could still do it on CPUs, but I never like did anything with them once I got them running, and they're still probably there. So like I said, like I took this farming for fun and profit class, and like I think farming is a great analogy for Bitcoin mining, because like you saw in that first image, like you're just accumulating like 0.1 Litecoin every day or whatever period for a long time. And it's a lot like watching a plant grow. Like, you don't see the growth every day, but like next thing you know, you look and you have like a full head of lettuce or like tomatoes or something. So instead of buying Bitcoin, like, would have been the dominant strategy, right? Would have been just buy some Bitcoin when you learn about it first. I was just like farming. The one financial thing that I did, which still sticks with me today, is a roommate of mine at the time. It was in investment banking, and he came to me with this strategy. He's like, oh, I want to buy Forex and sell Forex programmatically. And I like looked into it for him. And I was like, yo, there's this thing, NinjaTrader. It's software we could buy. We could like write a program for your strategy. And we did that. And like for a whole summer, we were just doing Forex, and it was working really well. It definitely went through a boom, but then it just like stopped working. And then everything went bust, and we pretty much exited with what we started with. So yeah, like I was doing farming as a hobby instead of like buying Bitcoin, but I was working as like a data platform engineer. So I had a strong background in computer engineering. I had worked in a data center, and then I had worked at a startup doing data warehousing and all sorts of data pipelines, running servers on cloud and physical. But then like, November 2016, I was like living in Chicago, and then my whole life, I just like burned out from working, and I was like, this isn't working. I moved from Boston to Chicago, and then I was like, I'm done with the Chicago thing, and I moved back in with my dad, and so this is like dinner with my dad in November 2016, like, hey, like what's going on here? And then, I'm not sure, oh yeah, you can see the line here, but like, starting in 2017, Bitcoin had hit $1,000 again, and in like 2013 and 2014, I actually talked to a lot of people about buying Bitcoin, because they're like, you're my computer guy, what is this thing? And I showed a couple people like, yeah, you just buy it on Coinbase. And a guy I know bought it like $800, bought some more like $300, like a smart guy he is investing. And I just didn't do any of it. But it hit $1,000 again, and I had a whole new flock of people basically hitting me up like, hey man, what's this thing? Like blah blah blah. And I'm like, I remember like using my dad's car to go buy pizza at the store, which is like what I did on Friday nights in the suburbs. And I was like, why don't I just do this mining thing? Like it's not gonna. If I don't do it now, why don't I do it later? And that's where I sort of formed my my mining thesis, right? So I just came up with that term for this, but. In general, I was like, look, this is a cybersecurity activity, right? What you're doing is you're participating in a decentralized network, a distributed network, and you're providing a service, burning resources, and it's securing the system. The other thing that I noticed was like, all right, these public blockchains, they, by their design, they reward the people that invest in resources and secure them. And so there you go. There's like a little business in itself, just be a cybersecurity person. And then the last part of my thesis was like, if I don't do this now, like I'm just gonna regret it in 3 years. Like, you know, like I'm regretting in 2012 when those guys were mining that I didn't do it then. So I bought myself a grid seat. This is the grid seat I bought. I bought the grid seat and then I bought some extra boards which you could like put on top of the grid seat. And then I was like off to the races. I have a couple of pro tips sprinkled in here. So like speculative mining for fun and profit. Pro tip, just don't quit your day job to go mining. Like this was the key to my success getting started. Like I didn't quit my job. I bought like a $500 miner, the cheapest one I could get that I thought would make money. And I kept my day job. At the time I was working as a data science manager. And the reason you don't quit your job is so you can buy more miners. So I was literally taking every dollar that I was getting at the end of the month and I was buying more miners. So I went from the grid seed to the A2, I think, the Insilicon A2s. And I was mining Litecoin just because I was like, Bitcoin is like the dominant pair. I'll just try the next best thing. There's really no reason other than that. Actually, there is. I had done it before, right? I had mined Litecoin before, so I was sort of familiar with it. And the other pro tip is just like mining whatever's profitable, right? So like, I mean, I'm securing these blockchains, also running a business, and like I gotta run what's most profitable. So I had a huge break because basically my decision was like, oh, look, I can mine Litecoin, but you can also mine all these other script coins. And I spent like a month thinking like, which one should I mine? And then I found Multipool or Multicoin, and I just stuck my miners on Multipool, right? And the way Multipool works is you mine whatever is the most profitable at that moment. And so this Multicoin wallet just started accumulating cryptocurrency, right? And then of course, like the next pro tip is like just hold, right? So like in speculative mining, I would say like, yeah, you can mine at a profit, but the real gains come from just being in the right place at the right time and having that speculative coin pay off. So like, you know, I went from like, you know, a couple Litecoin a day. Next thing you know, I'm like getting this alert, and I think this is like this is definitely into 2017 now. Litecoin above like $100. I was like, holy crap. I would also been like buying some Litecoin with, you know, when I wasn't buying miners, I was buying Litecoins, like why not? So everything just sort of worked out. Speculative mine, Litecoin, and some other script coins. They all pretty much went up. So mining at your house, I think it works. I don't see any reason why people shouldn't give it a try if you're into computers especially. But it's definitely louder and hotter than you think. Like you definitely can't go out and buy like the latest Bitcoin miner and just plug it in your basement. But you can go out and buy like you know, a nice GPU rig, plug that in your basement. It's still probably going to be louder and hotter than you think though. So here's an image of just me trying to make boxes, put these things in, which totally didn't work. If you tried soundproofing, that really doesn't. It's really like a hard, difficult thing to do. The amount of money I spent on soundproofing, I could have probably just bought like more miners and stuff. So, all right. So December 2017, like I started at the beginning of 2017. Really it was going into the fall where my operation at home ramped up. I had a bunch of machines going, and yeah, I mean, if you remember, like this is my friend. My friend, he just saved all his change from in college in a water gallon jug. And he went on Fantasy Tour, which is the fish forum, if anyone knows. And he just asked, like, hey, I saved $1,000 while I was going to college. What should I do with it? And this was like 2016, and someone was like, buy ETH, right? So he just bought $1,000 worth of ETH. And he was the one that really like inspired me to go all in because he was like, yeah, I bought this ETH thing and it just went up. So at the top, I just love his text message. I think it's hilarious. I forget what I sent him. I don't know what I sent where he's like, whatever, it's going to happen in the market. He's like, whatever. It's ETH time, baby. So, you know, next pro tip, I think sell your old stuff and upgrade. I mean, when things are going well, you know, the difficulty is going to ramp up. I actually got really lucky, and I mean, whether it's luck or skill, I'm gonna say I was like skillful enough to know that, you know, oh, the market's up, I should, you know, reinvest that in better rigs. So I went from the A2 to the A4 Dominator, which I forget what the jump was, but it was like a huge jump in efficiency. And I just bought one, right? Another pro tip, which might not be listed here, is you know, you don't have to go big. Don't go big. I bought one and then I bought three, just like classic, you know, hey, this works, let me get more. And it was working. I mean, it was doing really well. What didn't really work so well was solo mining. So I actually have like one of the top posts on Litecoin Talk about solo mining, because for like 4 months I pulled some solo mining firmware or software and like set up a solo mining Litecoin operation, and I mined like in the peak of 2017, 2018 mania. I was solo mining, making nothing on my newly invested machines. So I pretty much piled everything I had back into these 3 machines, and I was like, hey, let me try this solo mining thing. It could work out. But the reality is solo mining is just playing the lottery. It's really not a good idea on a small scale. And I actually had a friend who, this guy here, right, pro tip, partner with people who are smarter than you. This guy is just like me. He's not, this photo I think is hilarious because it makes him look like, it's not even in his facility. I know his facility. It's like somewhere else. I don't know where he took this. But he's up in Canada, and he has like cheap power. He found my solo mining forum post and was like, hey, can we try this on a bigger scale? And he was running like I think it's like a 1.5 megawatt facility up in Canada, and he had like 600 machines, and was like, let's try this. And it worked for a little bit, but the variance was just too high. So yeah, peak 2018, I guess not peak, now we're falling, right? Now it's probably middle of 2018. The markets are coming down, and I'm like, crap, this isn't really working in my basement anymore. This was sort of in the summer. And so I asked my friend, like, hey man, I know you have a facility, like, can I move my gear up to your facility? And I mean, some people probably recognize what kind of facility it was by like the foam and the shelves and stuff, but it was cheap, right? And I put my stuff there. I think I cut my power in like 40%. But of course, like getting all the stuff up there probably offset that. So here's where I start making mistakes. I bought these servers to mine Monero CPU. Mining Monero is not a mistake. The mistake is just like in a bear market where I should have probably just been like hoarding everything and like trying to squeeze every little bit of efficiency out of my machines through like firmware upgrades and stuff. I instead decided to buy capital equipment, and that was probably a bad idea. So I bought these machines. They were a lot less profitable than I expected, a lot louder, way louder than I expected, like ridiculous, way too loud. But I got them. It was a mistake. It was a terrible mistake. So don't do that, right? So, and then of course there's more bear market, right? So now I think that image was probably taken in like the summer of 2018, going into the fall of 2018. I have all my gear is up in Canada now. I have no miners at home for the most part. And I got these very expensive CPU miners, which were doing fine. I mean, they're doing okay, but at the end of the day, that was like everything that I had into those machines, which is probably not the best idea. I had a little bit left, and I was like, hey, let me just buy more miners, because what do I know? I just know computers. And so, one thing this is a pro tip, which is like, I think you should totally understand what you mine and why you mine it, because I got this machine. This is an E3 Ethereum miner. I guess they think of it as an ASICs, but I'm pretty sure it's just like specialized GPUs in there. I pre-ordered this for like $750 and waited like a couple months, which was like totally risky thing to do. But by the time that it came out and I got it, it was selling on eBay for like double that. So I had this thing. I didn't know anything about Ethereum. This is now you're in 2018. I had no idea what Ethereum was. I was totally focused on Litecoin pools and Monero. And so I was like, this is cool, it works, it makes revenue. Things I liked about it that I should have known were it was quiet and it was pretty power efficient. I mean, this you could plug into the wall. It was like 700 watts. You could plug 2 of them into a wall even, depending on your outlet. But I just didn't care. I didn't really care to look more into Ethereum. I was just focused on these computers. And then the other thing that I did was, these were 2 good moves. These were probably the best things that I ever purchased in the bear market. Which was another one was this thing, also mining Monero at the time because Monero was still GPU mineable. These were pretty cheap rigs. They were really economical in the sense that they didn't use a lot of power draw. They didn't make a lot of noise. They produced a good revenue. And had I just kept these machines and just like hung on to them, probably would have been a good bet. But instead what I did was I sold the Ethereum miner for double, and I bought another one of these machines, which would and turned into a downfall because they were expensive, right? So the next pro tip is like definitely don't overextend yourself. Like I have my own photos of like me buying too much. Like it gets even worse. Like I bought those 2 computers, but bought even more and more and more. But these photos I use for Don't Overextend Yourself because like a month after, or not a month, maybe 6 months after I started in 2017, these guys started in 2018 in North Philly, and this is a farm. Basically, they just ran out of money and they couldn't keep their operation on, right? They didn't have any money in the bank and they were selling all of their mining proceeds. And the only reason that I have these photos is because I showed up to liquidate them, right? Because what ended up happening was people in the mining community were like, oh, hey, here's this computer engineering guy in this region, and so we want these machines that are also in this region, so let's just ask him, maybe he can like rent a U-Haul and go pick up all their miners. So I like basically cleaned out this facility. I had picked up some other miners that went out of business myself, especially like when like Litecoin was like halving and all that stuff. But one pro tip is like I think you guys said $500,000. That's I think on point. It's just in my experience. Like you have to have a really strong hand if you want to scale this stuff up to like an industrial scale. Hobby mining at your house for fun, yeah, that's great, and maybe you'll make a little bit of profit. I think it'll be fine. Probably not because the computers are expensive, and power is expensive. But if you want to do it at a big scale, you have to be prepared to have like a really strong hand. You can't just like if $500,000 is all you have and you're gonna pile all that in. That's probably not a really good idea. You probably also need to keep a lot in the bank in case something goes wrong, like the difficulty goes up faster than you think, or whatever. So otherwise, you have someone like me show up and basically take all your miners away and pass them over to someone with a stronger hand. All right, so now we're in 2019. 2019, I still have some computers running, but here I'm starting to make the decisions of like, am I going to keep this on or am I going to turn it off? And I definitely minded a loss for a few months where I should have just like shut it all off, sell everything, and I just sort of held on. Literally, I held on. Some of that gear is just worth nothing at this point. But I shifted and I got lucky. I met some people that were doing other things. And I mean, people will look at this list and I'm sure some of you will recognize that like most of those options are terrible. One option, okay. Lightning Network, okay, or Proof of Stake, maybe. But I was doing a lot of networking. I ran some Lightning nodes for a while. I locked up far more Bitcoin than I probably should have on a Lightning node at the time. But then I sold it because I needed to support other things. And I was doing it kind of in this interesting way where I like, that router you see I bought with like cash at T-Mobile. So this node was like totally off the grid, running everything it needed so that it was essentially like untraceable. That's just what people were interested in knowing about. So, but what I really looked at, Lightning Node was just a little experiment. I looked at these master nodes things, right, which were all the rage in 2018. And you would lock up your money and you'd get like 1,000% interest. I mean, here, this isn't a screenshot of anything I have. I couldn't find any of my screenshots. I probably just wanted to forget it all and deleted it. But this was like Midas Masternodes, which is a place you could go to get like hosted masternodes. And I mean, naturally, what do you think happens to these things? I mean, obviously, if you're collecting 1,000% interest and everyone's collecting 1,000%, they just slide into nothingness. So like pretty much everything this is pretty much the payoff of pretty much everything I did in like 2018 and 2019. But I also found some good things, like this is a Decred staking setup. So one of the big wins was somebody paid me a contract to do research in Decred staking, particularly automated buying of tickets. And so these tiny little computers that consume no power, they have, I forget how much value locked in them in Decred, but it was a good amount of Decred locked in them. And basically they're just staking. And in addition to doing like, I can't show you like the actual results, but these are the testnet results. So, one pro tip is like, if you're gonna do this, you gotta keep really good records. I definitely did not keep really good records. I wish I had kept better records because I probably would have known sooner that there were problems. But I'm better at it now after doing some of these experiments. Getting towards the end, like the other pro tip that I would have is in this, like I would say a good amount of it's luck, but like you also have to make your own luck. So if anyone was around in Coinvention, like I went to Coinvention. Going into Coinvention, like I had my CPU machines mining Monero and they were working and that was fine. My Litecoin fleet was like on and off, I think. It was like October 2019. And so I show up at Coinvention and meet all these people. A lot of stuff in the Ethereum space was popular. I met these people running this project, Teller, and basically talked to them. They're like, yeah, at the time I like looked at it on the market and I was like, this is such a thin market. And I had been doing some other like market making things and I was like, this market's so thin, It's really weird, but like by now I had learned that like, hey, like a low liquidity market, a low cap coin, CPU mineable, that's a recipe for success. So basically what I did was I had some of my equipment, I redirected all of my equipment, all my CPU machines off of Monero and onto this coin, which I think is like maybe not a pro tip to go all in on one coin when you know it's gonna be profitable, but a one pro tip is definitely keep all your machines running and squeeze every little bit of like efficiency out of them as you can. Especially if it's like making profits and things, you should definitely keep them on. Keeping the machines running is like it's not as easy as you would think too. Like it's a little less tricky. So. The other thing is like monitoring your production. So by now I had learned all my mistakes. So when I started mining this coin, I basically had very like sophisticated systems for checking what was going on. I was solo mining. I mean, at times I was literally more than 50% of this network with my setup because I had just so many CPUs that I could just take over. And then I started mining pool, and then like once it switched from CPUs to GPUs, I was like, well, great, I can't really mine this anymore. But what I can do is I know enough about it, I can set up a pool. This is a different coin, so you can't just pull something off the shelf. So I had an advantage there that I knew what I was doing. Set up a pool, basically I had 50% of the network, lost it all when it went over to GPUs, and then my pool basically took 50% of the network again. Another pro tip is just like automate and monitor everything. So like now I have a very sophisticated setup monitoring like everything happening on Ethereum. I have, automated swaps at certain times. I have, monitoring blocks. Monitoring wallets is a huge thing too, just seeing when people are buying and selling. And also, monitoring gas, because the mining that I do now requires gas. I have to burn a lot of Ethereum gas. So here I am. I like have this mining thesis where, yeah, you can like get paid, security of the network and get paid for security. I started asking myself, like, are there other places where you need security in the market? And the answer was yes. And one of the big places was these markets need security in like the order books. So providing liquidity, I actually kind of wrote into my mining thesis as, hey, whatever, mining, as long as it's making cryptocurrency, I consider that mining, you're producing cryptocurrency. So liquidity, providing liquidity, before I even realized that there was this thing called liquidity mining, I had already sort of realized like, hey, look, if I make a market over here, I can actually earn crypto using like my crypto and things. And it falls into my thesis, which is like there needs to be security. Otherwise, people just come in and pump and dump. So I was starting to provide liquidity. The other thing I was looking at was like you can also provide expertise. And that's sort of what I would consider staked proof of work. So this is, I think, an often under-realized thing. I guess the liquidity pools first, but come back to the staked proof of work. So the liquidity pools, I mean, it's a little hard to see, but like the chart over on this one up to 20, I think 15 or 20% here is a 90-day chart. So if you provide liquidity, I don't know if many people know this, but if you provide equal parts Ethereum to US dollar coin, and you lock it up in Uniswap for 90 days, you're pretty much projected to have 20% more of both crypto at the end of 90 days. So the liquidity mining thing, putting swap and just like leaving it there for a long period of time actually produces a very, very high yield. It's not interest that you're earning, it's fees. When people swap on Uniswap and you're a liquidity provider. So I also really liked it because it was no longer inflationary rewards paying my bills. What was happening here was it's fee for service. So you're providing a service as a liquidity provider and you're collecting a fee. It's not just new tokens being minted, it's people. I got really big into this and sort of where I am today. The other thing is like staked. The proof of work concept is great for the blockchain, but it can also be applied to like other places where you need to prove somebody has done work. So the Claros, if anyone hasn't seen Claros and its Pinacoin, like Claros's Pinacoin system is like a decentralized jury system. And the way that you participate is you have to buy like 1,000 tokens and you lock them up. And then what you do is you make a judgment when there's a case. Escrow should either come back to me or go to the contractor. And so what they'll do is they'll pool some people who have staked tokens and they'll ask them like, hey, here's the information they sent us, here's chat logs, whatever. Make a decision, who should the money go to? And then it's sort of a a shelling coin system where if you vote with the majority, you take the minority stake, right? So you have to stake coins, and if you basically rule, you also take this coins from the minority, they basically have a bad ruling. And very early on, I was like, this looks like a really cool thing, but there were no cases. So I participated for like a month, and there were no cases, no opportunities to do this. Sold my peanut coin. I was like, this is stupid. A couple guys I know actually stayed on, and one of them was recently in the vote about the COVID numbers, which was kind of a famous Claros case, where somebody had done a prediction market that said like, will there be 1,000 COVID cases in July or something in the US or something, 1,000 COVID deaths per day. It was a prediction market, and that went to Claros, went to this system, because they didn't know. They were like, well, this source says it's 1,000, this source says it's 900, what do we do? He actually voted on the wrong side and got his coins slashed. But it was fun. This is a fundamentally different system because, again, it's not inflationary rewards. It's very different from masternodes. These systems are actually fee for service. So the guys I know that are doing this are like finance and a lawyer. They participate in Peanut Coin. And for them, it's been wildly profitable. I mean, we were talking about it in like September, like end of 2019, we were talking about this thing. We're like, oh, this is really cool. You needed a ton of tokens to stake too. It wasn't an insignificant amount. It's like $1,000 or something like that. And so for these people who just locked their tokens in and just sat there patiently waiting for cases, I mean, they got rewarded a lot. So obviously I think there's a little market fervor, but even just the fact that this is the exact opposite of what masternodes did. I mean, masternodes, they kind of had a moment like this, but like who knows if this is going to slide down into zero. I mean, it's just a different point in the cycle. All right, so how did I get started, or how do I get started? So the last two pieces are, like how do you get started on this? I mean, I think GPU mining is the best way to go. You're not going to get rich GPU mining, but it's so easy to get them. So if you really want to get into mining, I think just buy GPU miners is probably the best way to go. And then the next thing is like, the other part is be a liquidity provider on Uniswap. I mean, if you're holding Ethereum and you're holding like dollar coins, putting your liquidity into Uniswap is a very smart thing to do because the yields are so high. And I mean, if you don't trust the system that you're using with Uniswap and locking funds, then I mean, you probably don't want to have ETH because you probably don't believe in the whole thing anyway. The systems have been around for a while. They're pretty secure. People aren't getting screwed on Uniswap. There's $1 billion in there. Someone would have hacked it by now or not. They're waiting for $2 billion or $10 billion. But I mean, so far the yields have been really good. Or I guess not, it's like fees you collect have been pretty good. So I think that's the next thing to do. GPU mining, Uniswap liquidity pools. Those are where I like turn people in for speculative mining for fun and profit. And yeah, that's pretty much where I like end. So thanks.
You doing a Q&A?
I'll do Q&A. Yeah, I like to talk, so I'll just talk more. What do you guys want to know? Yeah, go ahead.
How long is that 20% return that you were talking about?
That was a 90-day, so I'll bring that up.
Repeat the question, please, for the screen.
Yeah, so the question was, how long was that, like 20% return? That was a 90-day Uniswap. Yeah, so the way it works is like you have to have, the way it works is you have 5 Ethereum, right? Let's just pick a number, right? 5 Ethereum, which is whatever, call it, $2,500. And then you also have to have $2,500 in US dollar coins, so 1-for-1 match. And then what you do is you deposit those into Uniswap. And then what you're doing is you're providing equal sides of liquidity. And when somebody makes a swap on Uniswap from Ethereum to US dollar coin, for US dollar coin to Ethereum, a little bit of your liquidity rebalances. But in exchange for that rebalancing, which is also compensated by the price rebalancing, you collect 0.3%. But the whole pool collects that 0.3%. So naturally, if you put 5 Ethereum, you're probably only going to have, like I think in my example here, I have like less than 0.01% of the whole kit of fees. So yeah, I mean, but you can, all these pools are pretty easy to just look at and see like which pool is great, which pool is not great. In general, the rule is you want to pick things that aren't correlated, because if the less they are correlated, the less likely you are to experience things like permanent loss, which is the scenario where all of the liquidity gets drained, and just through the way that those mechanisms work, you would have been better off just holding your liquidity rather than experiencing a shock to the system and drains half your liquidity. I think the statistics are like if the price of one asset relative to the other asset drops from 1 to 1 to 1 to, or I guess drops from 4 to 4, or 1 to 1 to 4 to 1, which would be like a 75% depreciation, you lose half of your investment. So it's a non-linear effect, but you can definitely, they don't all work that way. You have to pick pools that work, and there are pools that don't work. So yeah, and I've been in both. But yeah, good question. Do you have a question? Did you have a question?
So you suggested people start out with GPUs, but you know, with the price of ASIC, older ASIC miners getting really cheap now,
Yeah.
I mean, the price of a GPU is $900 still, you know, $700. So
Yeah.
why not get like a Z9 Mini for $90 and mine Pirate Core?
Yeah, I actually got started buying old ASICs, right? And that worked out really well for me. However, if I look back, like the dominant strategy would definitely have been to buy GPUs. And there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is because GPUs just inherently hold their value a little bit better than the ASICs. The other thing about the GPUs is like you don't need really a specialized system for them. You can like stick them into your computer. So I think it's just a matter of accessibility. I think the accessibility of a GPU is a little bit higher. The technical expertise to get a GPU mining is a little higher though too. So like plugging in ASICs and letting it run is one thing. But I don't know, I mean like I haven't really looked at like are there used ASICs that have at 12 cent kilowatt, 13 cent kilowatt. So I don't know if it would be worth it to buy these. I'm thinking probably not with the ASICs now. So yeah, I mean, but you could do it. I would if you have a basement and you have like a hookup for the electrical, I really think if you want to get into mining and you have the capacity to do it, buying just a Bitcoin, like the newest Bitcoin or Zcash miner, those profitable ones that sit at the top of the list, even though they use more power, if you have the capacity to do that, I actually think that's probably even better than GPU mining. But for most people, I think just, yeah, buy like a, you know, $700, $900 GPU rig and upgrade the GPUs. Once you get the rigs, list the GPUs separately on eBay, but keep them plugged in, keep them running, and then once they sell, use that money to buy. And then FPGAs is even better. Like right now, what I'm realizing is the same opportunity with ASICs is happening with FPGAs because they're packaging these FPGAs into ASICs form factors. So the new ASICs rigs that are coming out, I mean, they've been around for a while, but they're basically an ASICs form factor, but with FPGAs inside. And FPGAs, they have a lot of advantages over the GPUs, and they have a lot of capacity to make a lot of revenue. It's still super speculative because all the coins you can mine with FPGAs are mostly garbage. I mean, you know, but same goes for anything that's not Bitcoin ASICs. I mean, I think anything other than Bitcoin ASICs, you're essentially mining garbage. I mean, not to like put any of the other coins down, but like I think the dominant strategy today is probably find a profitable coin to mine and back it all with Bitcoin. Just because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You might have a couple of these altcoins that are going to pump another 10x or something, but maybe not. Bitcoin will probably do that, but who knows? But yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I got one. It's not,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Not so much a question, more of an opinion.
Sure, yeah.
All right. So, you know, I started mining back in 2014, I guess.
Yeah.
And I would say that CPU mining is probably the easiest entry point. So everybody's got a computer.
It's a good point.
You can download the thing. Bitcoin used to be able to just mine right from the.
Yeah, I wish I knew that.
That's one that I want to say. Also, as far as the ASICs, I mean, not FPGAs are concerned.
Yeah.
Digibyte is now FPGA. I've tried it. I don't know anybody that has tried it yet.
Yeah.
But it seems to be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had, with my Litecoin ASICs, like in hindsight, I think just switching to mine Digibyte would have probably been the dominant play because that eventually cut over to other things, but it also has had like massive appreciation. For a while, you can mine it really easily. CPU mining is definitely the easiest. And I mean, I often just overlook that because, I mean, for me, CPU mining means like Xeon Phi processors in like a server mount system. That's like what I think of because that was my experience. But the reality is, I mean, anyone can download NiceHash and probably just hash on their CPU.
What these guys were doing back in the days is I remember like some of these bigger college computer things.
Yeah.
Getting in and basically putting mining code on everything.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, you
yeah.
had mainframe mining, everything was running.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, CPU mining, like, I wasn't doing it then. I was, like I said, I was growing plants, which was, like, stupid looking back on it. But, yeah, I mean, just putting, like, software on CPUs. I mean, I worked in a data center. We used to joke about that. But, like, the reality is, like, we should have done that. I actually talked to some guys in New York, and they came down. They're like, well, what's going to happen with this mining thing? And I was like, you know what? Like, one thing I think would be really interesting is, like, security is a problem at all these companies. If they all just start using their excess capacity to mine cryptocurrency, they're going to 10x their cybersecurity skills. And the fact that they're producing revenue from it just to keep their employees engaged, like, it's probably, I would hope that companies would just start mining crypto if for no other reason than, like, stop the cycle of, like, tech talent leaving, you know, keep them on their toes as far as keeping their systems up to date and their performance monitored and all that stuff. But, you know, I see, like, a very virtuous cycle for a company to just say, like, look, we have excess hardware capacity. We should be making revenue on it. We don't pay rent. We don't pay electricity in our building. I mean, most of these places I know that have network clauses, they don't pay electricity. It's just bundled in their rent. And yeah, if you're mining crypto, you're just going to be active participants in your infrastructure rather than like passively, you know, not doing it. So yeah, I mean, CPU mining I think is a really good thing to do. The sad thing is today, like CPU mining is blown out by specialized hardware. So it's still almost as unaccessible because what happens is you just get, like with anything, you just get, if there's profit to be made, people specialize and like mine that to zero. Like ideally, like, you know, the margin on all this stuff goes to zero as it gets squeezed out. But yeah, come on up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess since we're here, you know, I might as well say something. So CPU mining, right? Going back, I don't know if you remember PrimeCoin.
No.
All right. So who remembers PrimeCoin? PrimeCoin. Right, PrimeCoin with the prime numbers. And,
Sure.
you know, there's like a lot of good CPU projects. I'm actually involved in a CPU project with Global Boost, and it started as a CPU coin back in 2014. Was the first one to use Yes script, so it's ASIC resistant. Basically, there is a GPU script that has come out. Just last night, I got blown away because we just closed the deal. We went 2,000% up on market cap. It fell back down a bit, but right now, I mean, we're doing blocks. The blocks are every 10 minutes, right? Every 10 minutes, it's 25 coins, and it's CPU mineable, and there's also GPU script, and it's at like 20 cents right now. So I'm actually down here looking for more miners. So if anybody's out in internet land and wants to mine Global Boost, come find us, Global Boost Y, BSTY, and we got a Telegram room. We'll give you the mining script for the GPUs. We need more hash. Right now, we need more hash.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you after. You got hash? I bet you do. You always have hash. I love you too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah, that's the shill for the day.
That's a good show.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the
Thank you.
last little bit I'll say is like this is just an example of just like mining isn't probably going away. Like
It's not.
the fact that you can still CPU mine profitably is an excellent example.
Oh, so about it not going away. Here we go. He opened it up for me. So we actually doing an
Wait, let's see
ERC20
what's
token. So we're cross-chaining it so it's mineable. That it's going to be able to be put over on liquidity pools. So I mean, there you go.
There you go, yeah.
So if you look at Wrap Bitcoin,
Yep. Yeah.
all right, it's climbing up the charts like crazy. Okay, Digibyte is trying to put one out, a Wrap thing. We've already completed it. We already have ours on testnet, and I was actually up till 4 in the morning last night screwing with it and plus playing with the exchanges. And within the week, hopefully, we'll have it out. So get on the exchange. You know where we're at. BSTY. Awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Any other questions?
I'll get you some CPU. Nice job.
Yeah. I have some CPU machines. Though I don't know if I want to get them out of storage.
I think we may end up at in about a half hour using your laptop to
Yeah, that's
screen
fine, if
this
you wanna use
Zoom
it.
call. I'm not sure. I really don't know what's fucking happening.
Yeah, I might have to plug it in, charge it, but.
All right, that's in about a half hour.
I do. They're in storage though. I have to go get them out. Yeah.
That's an old. There's my car.
Next up is the most accountable man on the planet, Ken Bozak. I had to yell him to get him off this fucking bench outside.
Where's Mike?
Yeah, no, so we have Crypto Comic. We got Crypto Comic Mike Salvi. And whatever Ken Bozak is.
What am I doing?
Is this the game now? Are we doing it?
Yeah, no, the game now. Doing the game now.
It's
Problem when you smoke too much marijuana.
You might as well.
I feel like there's a thing.
All right, Craig.
I don't know. Give me a second.
How's it going, everybody? Two mics? All right. I only need one. Three. We're doing a show called FUD or FOMO. All right, it's a game show that Ken came up with the other day. It's going to include myself, some more celebrity guests.
Yes,
The best that we can afford.
celebrating. All of us.
Me, Shay Zaza, we're here. Jack Wells, and Tatiana Maroon. Patient too.
Oh my God, remember that one where we...
Bring your own chair.
I love you, but this is not the time to have a conversation right quick. We'll go down memory lane in a second. So I just want to make sure. Okay, good. We go.
I'm just trying to get the questions up.
All right. So Ken wrote some questions,
Can't cheat. I see you looking over there.
and the rules are being put together by Tatiana as we speak. Number one rule is you can't cheat. Are you good, Ken?
Yeah, I just have to get the questions. Sorry. Put 'em on the
This
other
is weird not touching things. I can't. I usually grab the microphone. This is the first time I've spoken in front of a microphone since March 14th.
All right.
It's been a while. And you're not going to give me COVID. I've been away for all this fucking time. All right, so Ken's your host. And we're going to need some crowd participation. So we're going to need the first contestant. Raise your hand.
Mic check. How do I turn this thing on?
All right, good.
Mic check. Oh shit.
All right, good.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Are you ready to take this over?
Yeah,
Can
I guess I
sit
can
down?
take it over. All
All
right.
right, good.
So yeah, me and Mike were coming up with trying to do something fun, and yeah, we kind of riffed into this FUD or FOMO concept of a game show. So basically, we need a volunteer that wants to team up with one of these guys and go agree or disagree with their answers to some questions I have that are crypto related. If they say something that is incorrect and you disagree, FUD. All right. If they say something to a question that is correct and you do agree, FOMO. All right. And now, you're all on the same page. Maybe if they say something incorrect and you at least call it FUD, call it out for the being incorrect, you get a point. We have a Cobalt wallet. It's worth $50. It is a metal paper or metal private key backup. So you can back your private keys up on metal, and it's like waterproof, fireproof, and all that cool stuff. EMP proof, right? It's metal. And then I have a Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Monero face mask for the runner-up, so you can hide your shame. So, who wants to pick a celebrity to team up with? I mean, we could do this without participation. It'd just be weird, but I can make it work. I was fucking prepared for this.
All right, we can ask a question and we can ask it.
You gotta use the mic. Hey, I can't
There are two mics. There's only one that's on.
Is it on?
Yes, it's on.
Nah, somebody got cheap on the cord.
Oh. That might be me. Sorry. Is that better?
No. Now we all gotta touch the same mic. As Ken.
COVID.
You're not gonna show that immunity.
Hello. Yep. You move the switch until it's on.
Uh-oh.
The mic, yep, that's what happened. The mic gave out on the last call.
You don't pick us, we're picking.
Have you tried unplugging and plugging it back in again?
Twice.
You guys don't feel like getting up on stage and teaming up directly. All you gotta do as an audience is fucking yell FUD or FOMO when one of them answers a question, alright? And if you guys are on the same page as they are, they get a wallet. See, I came prepared. Alright, so we're up with Tatiana. Tatiana's gonna answer the question. If you agree, what do you say? Agree, what is it?
FUD.
Alright, FUD. Tatiana. Who
Afraid.
is the creator of Bitcoin? First question.
Oh, right.
Like literally first come, first serve, race over, first person to grab it wins.
Get out of the way!
Alright, we're gonna give somebody a Cobalt wallet and somebody a Bitcoin Litecoin Monero face mask so you can appreciate your second place. Thanks everybody, I appreciate you all. I hope some big's still here because I got the munchies. Have a day. Shout out to Aspire. Yeah, so you can sketch it out, write it out. If you have like a Dremel, you could punch it and write it in.
So what is it? What did we win?
Is this it? You guys can rock, paper,
donate it
scissors
to-
over that, and then second place gets the mask. But
Oh shit.
yeah, that's a Cobalt wallet. It's a way to back up your keys, and it's fireproof, EMP-proof, waterproof, all that.
Holy shit.
I would use it.
You would use it?
I would use it.
Then use
You
it.
guys wouldn't. But you guys maybe need it, no?
For what? I got a screwdriver and some metal. I'm good.
Man,
I got a
that's
black,
exciting. Cool.
whatever thing this is supposed to be.
All right, I'll do that and then I'll tweet about it. Give them a little bit of love.
What's this W78 all about?
Just hashtag our name. Harry, you gonna try it?
Did Fluffy ever get that meeting?
I got a guitar with me, so I feel like that might.
All you got to do is just be in the room in 8 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever. Are we streaming right now or no?
Yeah, we're streaming. I'm just trying to get the internet.
Yeah. We just put it back on there because the house gave out. If what's working?
Is the live stream working?
No, I can't check my phone.
Oh, that's great. I got 2 hours of recorded footage. I just have to find that email I sent Fluffy now and open it because and I lost the call. Yes? Exactly. Yeah, cryptocurrency uses cryptography, digital currency has no, there's no decentralized encryption. It's centralized ledger versus decentralized ledger. My go-to is like Bitcoin versus Pokemon Go. Or like Pepcoin. Pepsi now has a currency.
Okay, yeah, I saw that.
That's
Pepcoin,
a
yeah.
digital currency. Pepcoin.
Yeah, I saw that.
So any kind of like in-game asset for Fortnite, that's a digital currency.
Oh, okay.
Anything that you can send that would back up that custody of infrastructure, that would be a cryptocurrency. You gotta run the node yourself, start mining with your friends. You can still send Bitcoin from me to him. We're the only ones.
How am I gonna give them a prop if I can't even tell what they're in?
Yeah, that seems pretty normalized.
Yeah, but like. No, okay.
Does anybody have a lightning charger?
What?
Lightning charger, anyone? I got one in my car.
Oh, this is.
I got a lightning charger. I'm just not sure if it's worth it.
Okay. Kobo, K-O-C-O-B-O.
You said it didn't work.
Yeah, COBO.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna start them online.
Five of them, but like 2 or 3 that people that live in the US, it said US only. People that usually want to think somebody that you know in America, send them a gift.
You're right. Okay.
But yeah, Coco, you tell them that you're there with me and all that, you go jump to the line and check it out.
Well, I wanted.
It's a really good quality. I have 2 of them, but I got them. What's he gonna do? One that was in like San Francisco, and then I have another one I think from like
I use USB sticks, but I think those can rot like after a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Ricardo, how are you?
You can't project them.
No, because Ken doesn't have an HDMI out. Rick, can you hear me? And we've lost audio somehow.
Can we put in full screen?
I can hear you.
Oh, you can. All right, great, fantastic. How you been, man?
Good.
Quite
How
a
are you
few more
guys?
grays. The gray hair. Yeah. So.
Hey, listen, if I want to show slides, I can do so through screen sharing, right?
I don't see why not. Yeah, absolutely. You ought to be able to.
Host disabled attendee screen sharing.
And he
You'll
just
need
walked
to like
away.
enable that.
Can you re-enable these features? He wants to do a screen share for the slides. You wouldn't believe how poorly this morning went. Came in here, didn't have a projector, no microphone. When Bozak showed up, he didn't bring a keyboard or a mouse. We've been having internet issues all day long. It has been a profane nightmare. We got started an hour and a half late. Holy hell, it's been a mess.
Oh yeah. Well, that's been
But the food was amazing.
All right. It's out of the way. Should be good to go now. People are moving on in. Everybody was eating lunch, so we're all good to go. Everyone's coming.
I'm trying to share his screen, right?
Yeah, he wants to share his slides.
His
You
screen.
can hear him.
Oh, he needs to share his screen? Sorry about the delay. Zoom changed everything because of the Zoom bombs, so I'm just going to make you the host. I trust you.
That's fine.
What could go
I'll try
wrong?
not to. Yeah, I'll try not to show anything bad.
Go see.
All right, there you go. You should have permission now.
Yeah, that works. Thanks.
All right.
We might have to turn his audio up a little bit. Look at this, 15 minutes in, we're almost getting started, man.
Well, we've only been live for 2 minutes, so.
Okay.
Oh, we lost them.
Because you pay for them by the 15 minute.
I think we lost them.
Participants? Yeah, you lost him.
Yo, it's like the
He should be able to.
operator
There
phone.
we go.
Please send 16 more Monero for the next 25 minutes.
Like for just weird.
Ricardo Spaghetti.
Hey, want to chat with him? You haven't talked to him in a while.
Say hi.
Yeah, the stream looks good.
Okay, Zoom died on me. I just came back in, so you have to make me a host again.
You're in
Sorry. about
purgatory
that.
right now because we can only hear you.
Make him host again. You know who I'm
You,
standing here
sir,
with?
are the host again.
Thank you.
And the guy
Say hi.
What's up, Fluffy Pony? It's Mike Salvi. How's it going?
What is up?
Oh, everything. Nothing.
Cool.
All right, good. Seeing slides now. All right, fantastic.
Sweet. How do I end this? Oh, stop sharing. Cool.
Wait,
Are
were
we
they?
ready to get? No. Are we almost ready to get started?
Are we ready to
I
get
mean,
ready?
I was born ready. Oh, let me start my video. That might help. There we go.
There you go. You're on.
All right. Well, thank you for doing this. I know it's pretty late over there, right? It's almost bedtime. You got to go pet your dog and all that shit. With her absurd jewelry. No, I'm really excited that you're doing this because you know you do enough stuff online where people get to hear your opinions and stuff like that, but they don't really get to ask you questions one-on-one. So this is going to be, I feel like, a pretty unique experience for a lot of people here since you don't really come to the United States to be able to have a back and forth with you live. So what are you going to do? You're going to rip through some of the projects you're working on for a few minutes, and then we're going to beat the hell out of you with questions.
Sounds good.
Kill.
Cool. So, thanks everyone for having me. I'm gonna I'm gonna fire up a presentation. It's a presentation that I did on Tari last year. I've taken out a couple of slides because I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I felt it's a good way to introduce me and to talk a little bit about what I'm doing. So let me kick that off now. Here we go. All right. Cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing at Tari, and also why you guys should care, why anyone should care, really. So to start things off, you may know me as Fluffy Pony, but my name is Ricardo Spagni. I was the lead maintainer for the Monero core protocol software for most of its existence. I stepped down towards the end of last year. You can see that this presentation was done before I stepped down, because it still says that I'm lead maintainer. And I'm just going to talk briefly about what Tari is, how it's being built, and why anyone should care. So firstly, what is Tari? Tari is a new digital assets focused protocol. It's being architected as a merge mined sidechain with Monero. So what are digital assets? Well, digital assets are things that people can buy or earn, but exist entirely in digital form. So think of things like tickets, loyalty points, in-game assets, in-game tokens, security tokens, DRM. You could do DRM as a token, non-fungible tokens, which is stuff like CryptoKitties, and of course could be other things like digital baseball cards, that sort of thing. So it's really anything that has a life cycle that's digital. And our unfair advantage at Tari Labs is that we're not only contributing to the protocol, but we're also building actual businesses that will eventually use Tari. Now, how is Tari being built? This is maybe something that's of greater interest to technical people, but there's no white paper. The architecture is developed as a community. So before we even started writing code, we, as a broader community, not just Tari Labs, actually sat down and developed a bunch of RFCs. Tari Labs is the biggest contributor at the moment. And at the beginning, the only decisions we'd really made was that we'd use Mimblewimble as a base and we'd use Rust as a programming language. It's a sidechain with Monero, it's merge mined, and it has atomic swaps. And actual use cases and good design are the building blocks. Now, as I said, we started off with RFCs. Obviously, the truth is in the code, but at least, you know, like this was the initial starting point, like getting together as a group, as a community, and starting with like just figuring out what the thing should look like. Now, why should I care? Well, of course, it's not the only assets-focused protocol out there, but there's three things that that are challenging in the Monero community, at least, and I think this speaks to a broader problem in the ecosystem. Firstly, good UX is hard. The user experience in crypto kind of sucks at the moment. Secondly, educating regulators is hard. Regulators typically don't care about crypto, and where they do care about crypto, it's because they think crypto is bad and they want to try and pummel it into the ground. Or alternatively, they think that you know, crypto is something that is like a central bank digital currency. You know, let's issue a digital dollar and let's call it a day. And then the third thing, and this is very specific to Monero, is funding mechanisms like the CCS, which is a crowdfunding system that Monero has. And obviously there are others like GetChain and Gitcoin and whatever they're called. All of these mechanisms are often a leap of faith. People who want to work on privacy-related projects or crypto projects often need more regular funding. I mean, they need to be able to like pay the bills. They need to be able to support their family, you know, feed their family. These are important things. And oftentimes, some of these funding mechanisms lead to a bit of a leap of faith problem. So Tari aims to solve some of these. Now, when we speak about good user experience, what do we mean? I've got a little video that I'm just going to show briefly of like one of the UX patterns that we're working on. And the idea here is you can run a validator node, and a validator node is this thing that you just run passively. and it just kind of sits there and stakes some of your money as collateral for to make sure that your validator node behaves and follows the rules. And on a per asset basis, it'll pick up assets that need that are looking for validator nodes, and those assets will pay per transaction. And it'll say, okay, cool, I'm going to stake a little portion of my money as a promise or as a way to confirm that I'm going to behave well as a validator node. And then in return for that, I'm going to pay these little proceeds. So it's kind of like, a little bit like being able to fire up this piece of software, let it sit on the internet, give it a pool of money, and then hopefully reap some returns from that. And you can see from this user experience that even though this is a technical piece of software and this is something that a power user would use, we're really trying to make things just incredibly easy to use, really uncomplicated, something that somebody who maybe is unfamiliar with some of these things, it just is intuitive to them. And I mean, this is obviously something that is, like I said, for a power user would have all of the extra frills that power users would need. Now, there's a very real reason for wanting to build good UX into everything that we do. And it's because, like I said, the user experience right now in crypto is terrible. If you want to see another example of what we've built what we're building at Tari Labs on Tari, we currently have our testnet live, and you're welcome to pull out your phone and install Tari Aurora, like AURORA. And that's our testnet wallet. It's on the Google Play Store and on iOS in the App Store. And it takes you a few seconds to get fired up, and you'll get a sense for really what our how maniacally focused we are on user experience, which we think is a critical component. Now, one of the other things that I spoke about, of course, is educating regulators. Now, why does Tari help with educating regulators? It's because to some degree, things like NFTs and in-game tokens and in-game assets, loyalty points, tickets, all of these things are kind of like a sneaky backdoor, a little bit of a Trojan horse to regulators. Because if you can convince regulators that these digital assets on a blockchain, or at least using a blockchain, are something that's friendly and fun and needs protection, and of course you've got big IP holders behind that, companies like Disney and so on. And if you can convince regulators that this is like not a bad thing, it's not inherently evil, it's not a central bank digital currency, but it needs protection, it needs a soft touch from a regulatory perspective, well, then I think you win. And then, of course, in terms of funding, mechanisms or systems like Tari will allow, can allow more fluid and constant funding, continuous funding of people who want to chip in and work on privacy projects. So that's just a bit of an overview of what I'm doing at Tari. Now, I of course do other things as well, and it was alluded to earlier. I did start a payment gateway called Globi, and of course I'm most well known for my work on Monero, and I guess I'm also known for being a terrible troll on Twitter. But I wanted to really just hone in, and I know I've hammered a little bit on the user experience issue, but it really is a critical issue, and I think that anyone who's working on either privacy enhancing projects or crypto-based projects, or projects that touch on both, needs to think seriously about the user experience, because unfortunately, for us to get to the next million users or the next 100 million users, we're going to need a better user experience than we have today. And I know that there are some people who are putting a great deal of effort towards this and a great deal of thinking towards it, but I feel like as a group, we've kind of dropped the ball a little bit there. We're so focused, and I include myself in this, on all the technical stuff, all the plumbing. We're so focused on all the cool stuff that we want to do under the hood that oftentimes we forget that people just want to pick up their phone and install an app and use it. They don't actually care what's happening under the hood. So that's just sort of something that I've been trying to focus on lately, and align people's minds, because I think that is the way that we get to the next 100 million, the next billion users. So that's kind of all I wanted to say. I'm now open for questions.
All right. Is this thing on? Hello? Mic check? The other one? But I like this one. All right, I'm gonna use this one anyway. I like it. All right, hey Fluffy, I have a question. So how do we get like this privacy stuff to mass adoption with you know, the boogeyman in the room, with, you know, regulators kind of scaring people out of adopting? Like, it almost feels like privacy has become illegal, you know, and the more they keep pushing against privacy and making privacy options illegal, how do we kind of convince people to get into this, you know, with Binance delisting privacy coins, and how do we get mom and pop shops to start adopting them when we have the big players in the room kind of casting them aside? Thank you.
That's a great question. So I think that there's a number of different aspects there, a couple of things to unpack. The first is like, how do we convince regulators that privacy isn't bad? And, you know, how do we convince exchanges and users that privacy isn't bad? And these are obviously like very different things. So one of the things that we've been working on over the past, quite a while now, nearly a year, with Perkins Coie and with a bunch of other very, very brilliant legal minds, is to produce a privacy coin white paper from a legal perspective to really help exchanges and to some degree regulators understand where or how to handle privacy coins, how to handle privacy enhancing technologies in general. So not just like something that's really geared towards privacy, but something like Lightning that also enhances Bitcoin privacy. You know, how should regulators and exchanges deal with that? So this is, of course, written from a legal perspective. A lot of the stuff goes over my head, but it's really useful, and it should be coming out pretty soon, within the next few weeks. And it's something that we think and we hope will help give a lot of comfort to exchanges, that they understand where their limits are. What do they need to do in terms of things like the travel rule? What do they need to do in terms of compliance with FATF and with a lot of the other guidelines and pieces of guidance that are coming out from regulatory bodies? At the same time, we hope that there'll be this push upstream as well, that regulators will say, oh, look, I mean, this is how exchanges can comply. So let's make sure that we, you know, when we make changes to regulation, that we're not driving exchanges to more extreme measures, that they've already taken these measures. Let's adhere, you know, let's sort of enable them further. So I think those two things are ways that we can do it. But there is, of course, an optics issue as well. And I've encountered this. I've encountered it on Twitter. I've encountered it speaking to journalists. I've encountered it just chatting to ordinary people. And that is the general perception that privacy is somehow bad, that privacy is for criminals. And the unfortunate thing is, and I say this with all due care, that criminals typically are kind of early adopters of privacy, right? They're the ones that need it the most because they genuinely do have something to hide. And of course, you know, when I say criminals, I say that with caution, because what defines a criminal? A thing that I might find morally objectionable is, you know, what I would probably call criminal. But, you know, there's certainly been regulations in the past and even now that are, I think, pretty objectively not criminal. Famously, I think it's in Thailand or Singapore, where spitting chewing gum or dropping chewing gum onto the side of the street can get you thrown in prison. So, you know, I mean, like, what is a criminal? Is it dissident in a place like North Korea or you know, Venezuela? Is that a criminal? So, you know, once we start digging into these things, it does become super complex because a system can't decide what a criminal is. A system, a piece of software, is just a thing. It's a tool that can be used for good or for bad. And the definition of good or bad is typically quite fluid. Of course, there's some things that we can all look at and say, okay, well, that's pretty morally objectionable. Like, you know, murdering someone is morally objectionable unless it's in self-defense. And then we can go, okay, well, that was in self-defense. And so that's why, you know, with a lot of these things, I always try and liken privacy enhancing technologies to tools like cars or kitchen knives, because a kitchen knife can be used to stab someone, but a kitchen knife can also be used to chop vegetables. A car is a pretty essential tool. You drive your car to work. You drive your car to the mall. You drive your car to go get groceries. It's an important part of your daily life. But you can also take a car and drive it into a crowd of unsuspecting people as a terrorist. So do we start classing knives as kitchen knives as like dangerous weapons? Do we start classing cars as things that aid and abet terrorists? We don't. Why? Because we recognize that they are tools. And that's really what people understand, that a piece of privacy enhancing software like Tor, like I2P, like Monero, all of these pieces of software are just tools. They can be used for good and they can be used for bad. And by focusing on the good things, by focusing on people that are using it in places of need, by people that live under oppressive regimes where they really desperately need privacy enhancing systems, that's really where our focus should be. Forget about the criminals that are using it on the dark web or whatever. That stuff's just like it's what journalists use to get like clickbait headlines. Let's focus on the people that actually need this stuff, not the clickbaity headlines that journalists like to pump.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I'll do one. Let's do the elephant in the room, right? So fuck the whole IRS $625,000. But let's talk about the claims from CipherTrace. From what I understand, they were just claims when they were asked about details, and when they were even offered potential solutions, they just completely backed away from it. So I'd like to hear what's going on in your camp, the way you're thinking about it.
Yeah, so maybe like for context, for those that don't know, CipherTrace put out a press release and said that they've got a tool now that can trace Monero. There was a big sort of fuss made, lots of journalists just read the press release and then again ran a clickbaity headline, because why not? CipherTrace breaks Monero. CipherTrace can now break Monero. Like, these are great headlines to get clicks. But one of the things, and I kind of applaud CipherTrace for this, they were willing to go on an interview on the Monero Coffee Chat channel with one of the researchers from the Monero Research Lab, and with Justin, who is also quite knowledgeable from a technical perspective. And it was pretty clear from that interview that what they've really built is a visual block explorer, something that helps trace the potential links between transactions, which frankly, most of the Monero block explorers today do, maybe not as extensively, or it's maybe not as pretty as their tool, but all of them let you link back to previous transactions in a ring signature. The thing that they then did is they applied some guesswork, and they said that with a 90% confidence level, they know that that is the true output in a ring signature. And when pressed on this 90% confidence level, the CEO finally caved in and admitted that it's arbitrary. And it's worth watching the interview, because it does sort of highlight that they're not quite there yet. They're basically just guessing and putting a number on it, an arbitrary number, a confidence level on it, probably to get the many millions of dollars that they've been paid by the US government. And I applaud them for that. There is no problem with building a tool that is as fit to purpose as you can get to get these, several $1 million contract. That's cool. I think that what they have actually they've overstated what they've actually accomplished. At the same time, I think that anything like this pushes the Monero Research Lab and the Monero community to do better. There's various things that have been in the works for a while, like Triptych, whatever, however you pronounce it, which are now coming to the forefront, not because they weren't in development already, not because the pace has been lax, but now suddenly it's like, oh, that's actually pretty important. That thing should be a focus area, where maybe it was getting 60% of the attention before, now it's getting 80, 90%. So I think that there is a sort of net positive effect from stuff like this. I'm a little bit disappointed in them overstating their abilities. It would have been cool if they actually had found a break, like a really critical break, because then, you know, like that leads to bigger questions, like how did this get past so many people? Was it something that someone did notice in the past, but maybe like it was, you know, pushed down and not dealt with? And if that's the case, like maybe it's more insidious than that. Maybe there's people within the Monero community who are actually bad actors. So it's a little bit disappointing that we aren't, that we haven't got that. And in fact, what we've realized through this all is that we've actually done reasonably well, and has been like as expected, that open source has weeded out a lot of the weaknesses. And I think the pragmatism in the Monero community has helped a lot. You know, every Sunday on Reddit, there's a Skepticism Sunday post. And in that thread, people talk about how Monero is broken, how it's going to fail, you know, really being skeptical. And this is not like an invite for people who are external to the community to come in and troll. It's within the community. It's encouragement to people who are already in the Monero community to talk about all of Monero's pain points, all of Monero's abject failures, because how can they ever improve unless you talk about them, unless you discuss them? So a lot of these, and this is the other thing that's quite nice about the CipherTrace stuff, is they acknowledged the value of things like Breaking Monero, which is a series of videos that is really focused on some of these weaknesses that have come out as a result of discussions in things like Skepticism Sundays threads. So it's these tools are really valuable. These social tools are valuable in terms of improving Monero's privacy, and I can only see it continuing to improve from here because it is a focus area. In fact, it's like the main focus area.
I don't want to ask all the questions. If anybody else wants to come up and ask one, we can do that. But I would like to do one more. And your response is going to be a lot more vague. This isn't going to be a very like Monero-centric question. It's more about security in general. I first met you up in Consensus in New York because I found out you were just organizing the Monero Village, and I was over in the IoT Village at the time. So what I wanted to talk about is, we all right? We done? So I recently had a chain that had a vulnerability come to me. I'm not going to say which one, of course. And they were like, "Hey, we need a more formal security assessment, right? We need some penetration testing, find the vulnerables, all that shit." And naturally, as you know, some companies are better at academic stuff like peer review. Some are better at incident response. Some are better at threat hunting and things like that. Now, the problem is that open source contributors typically aren't going to, they're going to get low-hanging fruit. This is an opinion of mine, and I want to hear you expand on it. They're going to find low-hanging fruit. They're not going to put the effort in. There isn't going to be a formal report generation or anything like that. What suggestions would you have for any blockchain or crypto projects that are coming to see the light of day and they're decentralized?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, something like obviously bug bounties work. We know bug bounties work, and frankly, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. You know, it's not like you need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in bug bounties. But I think having a clear vulnerability response program, using something like HackerOne, making sure that it's pretty clear that you can actually get rewarded for your research is great. And if you're an upstart company, you know, I mean, if you can't actually go out, if you can't afford to put together a pool of like $10,000 or whatever, no problem. Do something cool, like make a t-shirt, you know, or make a coffee mug. Just make something that you can give out as a bounty. I think that's pretty critical because at the end of the day, if a researcher, like most researchers are not paid to go out and poke at your piece of software and figure out the problems with it. Most researchers like do it out of interest. You know, they have an interest in the system, or you know, they have an interest in the underlying blockchain that you're using, or they have an interest in the programming language that you're using, that you're writing your software in. So they're going to go and they're going to be mucking around. Sometimes it might be that they work for a company who's a competitor. and out of interest, they're poking around. Now, what do they do when they find this issue, when they find something? Like, you have to make sure that they are, at least those researchers who stumbled across it, you want to make sure they're sufficiently motivated to report that issue. And we do live in a world where ODAs can be sold for, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes even millions of dollars. I think blockchain protocol stuff, it's even worse because they can just exploit it for like free money. So it's you really have to motivate them. And the way you motivate them is clear VRP, whether it's using HackerOne or even just a markdown file in your repo. Really just absolutely clear guidelines, what is out of scope, and don't make the scope like ultra narrow. That doesn't help either. Like, your blockchain system is live. Like, they're going to test in production whether you like it or not. So don't make it overly narrow. Don't force them to go like test things on testnet. Like, they're just the more you try and like handcuff them, the harder, the less inclined they're going to be to go and prove things. Also, as part of that VRP, if you need a proof of concept, I fully support that. The Monero VRP says we need a proof of concept, but don't be a stickler. Like, if someone comes along and they're like, hey, there's this obvious issue, don't be like, well, put together a proof of concept to show how it can be attacked. If you can see that the attack, if you can figure it out, within like 20 seconds of reading it, then why make the person go do the extra work? So, like, your VRP also needs to be flexible, and there should be a good report. Researchers should go and speak about like how well received they were when they went and filed a report in HackerOne. And admittedly, with Monero, we've had a few missteps. We've had like, especially at the beginning when we were like trying to get our bearings, we did have like one researcher that we really just did not click with and struggled with. He was trying to poke at stuff that was out of scope, and it ended up getting a little bit messy. And he wrote an article about it, or wrote a blog post about it, and that's not a great look. Okay, it's a few years ago now. We've gotten over it, and like, part of the VRP is disclosures, right? So if you go read the disclosures on HackerOne, you can see that the relationship we have with researchers is great now. But really, it does come down to like having that VRP, having a good relationship with researchers, treat them well, have a bug bounty, whether it's a cap or a t-shirt or money. They love money. Just give them something to reward them for their efforts, because it is more than just stumbling across something. That stumbling across something is the first step. And anyone who's like, if you've been a developer even, you'll know this. When you figure that thing out, or when your brain starts to go like, hey, something might be here, you're just like a dog with a bone. You'll go till like 3 o'clock in the morning for a week in a row, just really trying to figure that thing out. And it's kind of unfair when you've put in all that effort and, all you get is like a handshake. So like, just throw something at them, give them some reward to thank them for that. And I think that's for open source projects, for startups, that's the best way to do that. Of course, if you want to get a bit more formal, then there are lots of things that you can do. You can go and engage a company. And as you so rightly pointed out, Nathan, there's companies that specialize in, the sort of more academic side of things, or the sort of cryptography side of things. And there's some that specialize in more in the implementation. But you can bet if you, with a lot of these companies, they will go and do a code audit. And you can give them a very narrow scope. You can be like, well, we have a fair degree of confidence in this piece, so we don't care about that. But this thing over here, well, we're a bit nervous about. So let's just do a narrowly scoped review and audit on this. And I think that a lot of companies, or a lot of startups, because they don't have experience in this, they tend to go like, well, we need a pen test. Okay, our website's been pen tested, now we're fine. Or we need an audit of the entire code base. Please come audit the 55,000 lines. And that's like, it's daunting from a security perspective to audit that massive code. And as a result, the costs go up. And when you get that quote and you look at it and you're like, well, we can't afford that, we're a startup. Like, the easiest way around that is just to make it narrowly scoped from the beginning. Focus on your pain points. Focus on the areas within the code where you know you might have taken shortcuts. And I think those two ways are the best ways that startups and open source projects can really embrace the security community.
Making it open source as well. Hey, Fluffy Pony, what's up? My name's Angelo from Pirate Chain.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on? So, yeah, I agree 100%. I'm a big advocate of privacy. I love Monero and I love Pirate Chain, of course. And that's probably the only two coins I love. So I have a question for you. At some point, you know, the anon set, right? Is there a tipping point with an anon set? Like, can it get so high that there's just no point in even trying to trace it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. So the way I think of it in terms of like a tipping point is, you know, think about stuff like TLS, right? I mean, TLS from an encryption perspective is pretty mature. It's, you know, we've I mean, OpenSSL has had enough bugs that I think we've really figured out the ins and the outs. And at this point in time, stuff like TLS 1.3 is like a relatively mature spec. In fact, probably one of the most mature specs from an applied cryptography perspective that exists out there. And yet, organizations like the NSA are still like schnaufing up all of this data, all of this TLS encrypted data, and storing it. Not because they can decrypt it now, but they know that at some point they'll have the capability to decrypt it. And hey, disk space is cheap, so they can just schnauf that up and they can store it for later. So I don't think that there's a tipping point in terms of like from an attacker's perspective where they can ever look at it and say like, oh, we give up, we're not going to touch this, because ultimately, even if the system is temporal in nature, so something like Lightning, where it's not permanently stored on a chain, there's still value in an attacker just schnaufing all that data up and just storing it and saying, hey, I can't figure it out now, but in the future, as my capabilities as an attacker increase, I might be able to do so later. So I think that ultimately privacy is a cat and mouse game. It's not a game of like, well, we've solved it. You know, we've made it so impossible for attackers that they will never be able to do this. All we've done is we've made it infeasible for attackers to break it today. But that's not to say that it's infeasible for them to break it tomorrow. And it doesn't mean that they're not storing it for later decryption or for later attacks.
Gotcha. Do you think Monero would ever switch to a zero knowledge solution?
So Monero already does use zero knowledge in multiple ways. For example, the amounts on Monero transactions use range proofs, which is a zero knowledge circuit. So specifically, we use bulletproofs as a way to prove that a value is positive, so that there's no money being minted out of thin air. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of effort and energy going into the application of zero knowledge circuits within Monero. And the Monero Research Lab is, they've investigated tons of it. Things like Halo 2 that Zcash put out are of course interesting. The problem with Halo 2 is license related more than anything else. But there's still like a trust factor. There's still moon math. You know, there's still aspects of it that are unappealing to Monero right now. Stocks are, of course, ZK stocks are another area of interest. Again, you know, one of the big barriers to entry there is it's just infeasible to use ZK stocks for like day-to-day transactions, especially on a mobile device. And it's also kind of infeasible to say to people, well, you can use this. It's got fantastic privacy, but you need to buy this little ASIC that you know, creates your transaction for you. But yeah, there's tons of research being done in that space, and I think that I'm curious to see how it goes over the next sort of 4 to 5 years. Put it that way.
Okay, thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
All right, anybody have a question? There we go. All right, one more coming your way, bro.
Hi, I'm Jason from Komodo. Nice to meet you. There's a couple of questions I had. One was about Tari. Why did you select to use Mimblewimble for your sidechain? It seems like a weird choice because it's interactive nature and also it has some privacy issues as well. At least several months ago it did. And the second question is regarding Monero ring signatures. Previously, there's been a lot of research done with dusting attacks, and it seems like this is something that is kind of like I don't want to say fundamental flaw, but it's something that is very easy for somebody trying to de-anonymize do. Just spin up a bunch of keys and send some dust to them, and then all of a sudden you have a large portion of the existing keys. So I was just wondering your thoughts about those two things. Thank you.
Cool. Sure, no problem. So great questions, really good questions. I guess, so let me talk about the first one. So why Mimblewimble? So a couple of reasons. The first is we felt that with Tari, we could make different privacy trade-offs than Monero. Our focus is on scalability. And because the base chain is not really, I mean, it's not that it won't be used as a form of money. It's just that the main point of that base chain is for assets to be able to checkpoint back into it. So Mimblewimble sort of lent itself towards that a lot more. You're right, there are certainly challenges. You can see if you download the testnet wallet, the interactive nature can be quite annoying. David Burkett does have a scheme for non-interactive Mimblewimble transactions that we're playing around with. So I don't think the interactive nature of it is like a total killer. I think that is something that we will overcome. You know, as a like Mimblewimble as a whole, not just Tari. But I think yeah, absolutely, the privacy stuff, it is a set of trade-offs you're making. You're sort of saying, like, you know, I'm willing to have less privacy than Monero, but more scalability. And whether that privacy is good enough or not remains to be seen. So yeah, there's a distinct reason why we sort of went down that road, and it really was favoring scalability over privacy. With regards to the other question, with Monero ring signatures, yeah, so sort of like, again, like for context, for those that don't know, with a Monero transaction, you create a ring signature, and what you do is you take the entire Monero blockchain and you go and you fetch a bunch of old outputs and more recent outputs, and then you create this ring signature with your actual output that you're spending. And to any observer, any passive observer, they just see that this transaction input has spent one of 11 outputs, and it can't actually tell which of those, you know, 11 plus yours, which of those is the real one. And so, you know, it's just like, without having any additional information, there's just nothing that they can do to guess. Now, there are a number of things that people have done in the past, and that is, for example, they've looked at spending patterns, and they've said, well, you know, typically a more recent output is the one that is the true spender, and that is true. You know, your most recent activity is kind of at the head of your blockchain. People don't often crack open old wallets and move funds, although they do sometimes. And so what we did to address that is we changed the way that the output selection algorithm works to favor newer outputs. But it still includes old outputs, which really speaks to the attack that you're suggesting, which is, okay, well, if I'm an attacker, for relatively cheap, I can spam the blockchain. And I know all of my outputs because I'm the attacker. I'm creating all of these outputs. And so if somebody creates a ring signature that includes all of my outputs, or at least the bulk of my outputs, and then their one, then I can go like, all right, that's the real output, because I know that I control the others. Now, this is a problem, I would say, that particularly affects anything that tries to clone Monero, because, you know, at this point in time, it's pretty clear that Monero is a something of a leader, maybe not a leader in everyone's mind, but clearly from a regulator's perspective, Monero is the largest or most used, whatever we want to call it, privacy coin in existence. And so anything that clones Monero software, anything that forks Monero software, will be of immediate interest to regulators. And it's relatively cheap for them to spam that new blockchain. so that they own 90% of the outputs from the word go, 99% of them if they want. They can just, sort of watch it and say like, oh, okay, a new real transaction has been made. We're going to just spam a bunch along with it. So they can just keep in pace with the actual growth of the blockchain. Now with Monero, it's a lot harder because Monero, of course, didn't have any interest from regulators or from anyone in particular for years. And output selection today still taps into those old outputs. So that provides some protection that there's always going to be a question, like an attacker can't go back in time. They can't own those old outputs. And if you have a transaction where in the ring signature, the attacker owns, the newer outputs, some of the newer outputs, but can't own the older ones, there's always going to be a question. Is this transaction is that really the true output? Or is this older output or that older output that was included in the ring signature the real one? And that's really the power, right? It's not that Monero provides some sort of perfect privacy. It's that it provides just a big question mark above it, that an attacker, even a sophisticated attacker with additional information, will never really know. And the person making the transaction will always have plausible deniability, because even if you could figure out who the person was and knock on their door, you could just be like, well, it wasn't me. My transaction output was included by someone else. You can't prove that it was me, because it could be some dude opening his old wallet, and it's that's why it's spent. Like, it could be me opening my old wallet or whatever. I mean, like, there's all sorts of things. So that plausible deniability is really the key value there. And none of those attacks, none of those dusting attacks erode plausible deniability. Plus, there's the very real fact that a lot of people in the Monero community are themselves performing these churning, not attacks, but churning actions to create outputs of their own. And the more that happens, the harder it becomes for an attacker to really gain any sort of foothold. The other thing, and this is something that I've thought about in the past, and I can't say with certainty if this is the case, but if you think about it, you have a number of organizations that might be interested in attacking Monero. You've got organizations like CipherTrace and some of these blockchain tracing organizations. You've got organizations like the NSA. You've got certainly in Europe there's multiple intelligence organizations. You've got the Five Eyes and that sort of thing. And then of course you've got other organizations like in China and so on. And if all of these organizations, if only a couple of them are trying to perform the same attack, they're basically just playing it off against each other. They're all trying to own 90% of the transactions, but they're all not able to, at least not without blowing the Monero transaction numbers out the water, which is not something that we've seen. We haven't seen gigantic spikes in the number of transactions per day. We've seen a slow and steady drumbeat increase, but not enough for it to appear to be any sort of diabolical attack. So I'm pretty confident in the way those attacks have been averted thus far, and in the way they will be averted in the future.
Oh, thank you for your answer. Sorry. Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you for your answer. Yeah, it was just something that I'd done some research into before about Monero ring signatures. Yeah, actually, little known previously to going the ZK Snarks route. CryptoNova is considered to be one of the possible candidates when we created Cometa, so that's why. So just cool. Had some background history, but thank you for your time.
Thanks.
I'm gonna pop back in here. I'm gonna say goodbye to you. I wanted to note that while I was sitting there listening to your answer to my question, I did notice the frustration in your actions and everything like that, and that was very refreshing to see. What I brought up about the whole security thing, I don't agree 100% with your answers, but I think it's something that really needs to be spoken about a lot more, especially coming from the whole DEF CON thing. People don't understand how small and insignificant cryptocurrency and blockchain is in that space. They don't care about us. We are poorly behaved bastard children to that industry. And no, I would like to cheer your ear off about it sometime. However, I still have other people here that have to speak today, and I really appreciate you doing this, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Thank you, bro. Have a day.
Cheers.